So far we've come in here and we've written our oil loop charges, our flush charges, our parts, our miscellaneous charges. Next two, we're going to write these two. They're going to be almost identical to one another. Did you hear me? Almost. So I'm going to cheat, and after I get done with the first one, I'm going to copy the whole thing, and wherever it says parts, I'm going to change it to labor. Does that make sense? Do you have to do that? You do it any darn way you want to do it. All right? Then this one, like I said, this routine right here is one line long. This routine right here is one line long. When we get to this routine, we're again going to modularize it. We're going to tell it to display the oil stuff. Then we're going to tell it to display the flush stuff. Then we're going to tell it to display the miscellaneous stuff. Then we're going to tell it to display the parts and labor stuff. All right? Just so you can kind of get a little prelude or whatever of what's coming. So I'm going to come down here, and underneath this, after my miscellaneous charges, I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to have my private void, and this will be my parts charges. All right? Now, again, I am not going to say to you, you know what? Damn, I can't believe what a great routine I wrote. It works. If you were to look at it and say, I don't like the way you did this, then change it. All right? So the first thing I did was this. I want to handle it so that if there's nothing in there, the program doesn't break. Did you hear what I said? I just want to handle that. So the first thing I put in here was if, and you know this, text box, parts, dot text, equal, double quote, meaning it's empty. What do I want to do? Well, I'm going to manually come in there. Make that a little bigger. Can one of you tell me what in English what that's doing? No, you're making it too hard. If there's nothing in it, put something in it. Right? And what I'm going to put in it is this. The equivalent of nothing. And since it's a text box, I have to put it in as a string. Okay? Now, if I do both of those, if it is that, there's a value in there now. Would you agree? Because if there wasn't anything, there is now. Does that make sense? So now I can come in here. After I've done that, guess what? I'm putting in a try-catch block. So I'm grabbing everything that's in that text box. All right? Boy, oh boy. Come on, there you go. All right. Now we're going to do the catch in just a minute. So right now, it'll probably give me an error because I don't have a catch and I don't have a finally in there. But I just want you to key in what is there right now. Again, come in here, you look on the screen, play computer. All right, so I've got that thing that says parts. And then I've got the text box. What we're saying here is if it's empty, when we run the program, fill it up so that it looks like that. Does that make sense? That's all we're saying. So either, that isn't true, and if there was $30 in there, it's 30, or there was nothing in there, and now it looks like this. All right? So this says, take whatever is in here, and so I don't have to keep typing that, just call it temp. And then attempt to take what's in here and convert it into a double. You might say, well, it's already going to be a double. What if I put in this? Hello? What if I put that in? It's going to break, correct? All right, right now it's going to break. So this is saying if I cannot convert it into a double, throw a new format exception. But if I can, if I get down to here, I could convert it. So that means I put a number in there. So take that number and put it into parts cost. Does that make sense? Because it's a valid number. And we're going to do the exact same thing in just a minute, but with labor. All right, so we're going to do the same thing in just a minute. It's not identical, but it's very close. So we tried doing that. But again, we could throw this format exception, so we have to handle that. So we want to catch that format exception. And I just called it FE. Again, you can call it whatever the heck you want. It doesn't matter. All right? Now, if you look up on the screen, don't type this. We could just do this, right? FE.message. We could do that. But it's not going to, what do we need, the parens there? But it's not, that's not going to actually do very much for us. All right? Oh, it's just message. So that's not what I want. We could do that, but that would be kind of dumb because the message we're going to get is going to be, it's going to just say something like format exception occurred. Well, that's not very good. All right? We want to give the user some kind of an idea of what they did wrong. Something. So I said, you know what? Let's put in a message box. You know how to do this now. You know how to create a message box. We've done this before. Now I can say fe.message. All right, I'm going to put here parts. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's going to end up looking like this. The message box up here, all it's going to say here is error. Then it's going to say setting parts to 0. Then on the next line, whatever the system writes. And up here, it's going to say part, cost, format error. And here, there's just going to be an OK button. And it's going to have in here an exclamation. All right? So we've done all that. That's cool. But you know what? What do I want to put? I don't have a valid parts cost, correct? So what I'm going to put in here is after I do the message box, I'm going to set part cost equal to 0.0. And I'm only going to be doing that if I had a bad value in there. All right? no errors, but if you look up on the screen here, we did a try, we did a catch. We haven't done this before, so let's put in a finally. Okay? Now we have either a valid cost to begin with or a zero that we put in. So parts cost is now valid. All right? So now I can take whatever that parts cost was and say subtotal plus equal parts cost. And just to be sure, I can take text box parts dot text, and I can set it equal to whatever I had in the parts cost dot toString and currency. So that's the first time that we actually did the try, the catch, and the final. We did all of them. All right. And again, one of the reasons I wrote it like this was to be able to demonstrate that to you. All right. So now I've got my parts cost. So the next thing is my labor, or my parts charges, is my labor charges. As I mentioned to you, I'm going to go down here where it says parts charges. I'm going to highlight the entire routine, every bit of it, top to bottom, copy it to the clipboard, hit enter, and paste it back in. Now I'm going to get an error because I already have one called parts charge. So I'm going to change this to labor charges. And everywhere it says parts in here, I must now change it to labor. Now, you may or may not agree, but I just changed everything. I think that was a faster way of doing it. But it is your responsibility to go back in here then. It is your responsibility to go back in here and make sure labor, 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 labor. It looks like I hit all of them. I will check this because you are turning this in. This is 25 points. All right? But you are turning this in, and I have a bunch of tests that I'm going to run. And if you screwed it up, if you went and copied all that and didn't copy over everything, it ain't my problem. It's like I'm Joe. You're creating this for me. And if it's wrong, that means that I'm going to conceivably have wrong things I'm charging my customer. That could tick them off, or it could tick me off if I end up not charging them for things that I should be charging them for. All right? So what we've got left are tax charges, total charges, and display bill. So let's run the tax charges. Now, I mentioned this before. You may or may not care, but sometimes, depending on who you are, with some people, they like to kind of do this kind of thing. And, you know, they sit there and before every single break that you've got, they put in this. Do you have to do that? Heck no. But if that makes it easier for you to see when something starts and something ends, then do something like that. If you don't like the way I did it, come up with your own way. That's fine. So again, I've got to jump up here now, and the next one to write is tax. We just did tax charges. The next one to write is, no we didn't, tax charges. So let's do that. So right after my last charge that I have in here, which was my labor, I'm going to come in here and put a new one in. And it's tax charges. The great news is it is one line long. That's it. One line long.
Why is this one public?
Because I forgot to say private. All right. This just is tax total equals the subtotal, which I now have, times the tax rate. That's the whole routine. And that should make sense to all of you. So again, if your bill was $100 and the tax rate's 8%, your tax is $8, right? Should be. Now, I'm going to copy this. I'll do it here. And then right below what I just did, so I just put this tax charges. I'm going to change that to total charges. All right. And what's that's my final total, and that equals my subtotal plus my tax total. So that's those two routines. So now if you look up at the top here, we've got that done. So the only thing that's left to do is to display our bill. And again, I wrote this in a modularized manner. All right? So I'm going to get the error for taking those off because I haven't written display bill yet, but we'll write that right now. So, and again, I think it makes sense to put the stuff in the order in which you're calling it. Makes it much easier, I think, when you're going back and trying to look at stuff. If you don't agree with that and you say, no, I want to do it alphabetized, I don't know why you do that, but you can do it whatever way you want to do it. By no means, again, by no means am I saying, you know what, you ought to do it the way I'm doing it. Why? Because I'm doing it that way. Right. So I'm going to do my display bill now. And how am I doing it? Again, modularize. So I'm going to call 5 different routines. Display oil lube charges. All these are going to be red squigglies underneath because I haven't written them yet. Flush charges. Miscellaneous charges. Okay, and again, I'm going to go and after I've got that there, I'm going to comment those lines out. Just so I don't get the squigglies. Oops, I don't want to comment that one out though. And now I'm going to start writing these. So first, the first one to write is my display oil lube charges. All right. Now, what I want to do, if you'd stop for a second and look up on the screen, what I have to do here is in this routine, I have to look at each one of these. And I have to say that basically, if that is checked, or get checked, then I want to display that. If that is checked, I want to display that. If that is checked, I want to display that. Otherwise, I don't want to display anything. Correct? Now, I don't have to tell it to display nothing, because that'd be kind of dumb. I could do that. But it's going to be if this, do this, else if this, do this, else if this, do this. Does that make sense? All right? Because that's the mentality that I used when writing all these. So, if the way that you add stuff to a list box is you say the name of the list box dot items dot add. All right, so this is what we're going to add. I'm just going to cheat here a little bit. Oops, that's what happens when I cheat like that. That is the whole routine for the first one. Now, just if you would stop for a second, I can actually test that part now. What do I mean? Well, when I go back in here and run this, and hopefully I'm not going to get any errors, but I'm going to choose oil change and click calculate. Well, those are 0, but I haven't told it to print out yet. I already know that's good though, right? Because I didn't put anything in there and it didn't break. That's good news. All right. So later I'm going to have to actually tell it to display that stuff. All right. This box items add. You know why it didn't print? Because I took my call to it and I commented it out. See that? Oh, you farmer. All right, let's try running it again with that uncommented. So I'm going to choose oil change, calculate. There it is. Oil charge, $25. All right, I'm going to clear and I'm going to try it again with my lube. Oops, not going to clear that. Lube charge, $20. Good. I want to try it again with oil and lube. Oil lube charge, $35. That's good. I've now tested all 3 of those. Now I'm going to put in these next 2 and test those. Make sense? And I'll tell you something. If you are being paid to be a programmer, think of the different permutations that you've got here. It is your responsibility to test every combination that there could be in there. Just on the off chance that somehow when you put in some goofy combination, the program's screwed up. All right? Because if you are doing something for somebody and something screws up, for you to say, you know what, it was the software's fault. They don't fire the software. Sorry, may not be fair, but that's how life works. All right? So that was the first one. The next one is going to be to display the flush charges. So right underneath the one we just wrote, was. All right, so there was the display lube and oil charges. All right, put that up there. Again, if you're having trouble keeping up, I'm not typing that fast. I'm talking over a lot of my typing. You probably won't be asked if you go in for a job as a programmer. You probably won't be asked, how fast can you type, Jesse? They're going to assume you know how to type. All right. I will tell you, and maybe I've told you this before because I find it funny because I have a stupid sense of humor, that one of the first jobs I ever went in for, my first degree was in journalism, and I went in to a newspaper, and I interviewed there, and the guy said, how fast can you type? And I said, it depends. He looked at me funny. He goes, what does that mean? I said, do errors count? I thought that was funny. He didn't. It wasn't that great of an interview before that, but it ended pretty soon after that. And he probably thought, well, you wise ass, we don't need you that badly. You know, at that time, there were 100 people applying for every job. All right. So the next one, again, will be to display the flush charges. All right, whoops, sorry. And it's going to be very similar to the one that we just wrote. All right, so remember too, this one, these are check boxes. This is not an if, else, if. That is that whole routine right there. Again, then it's your responsibility after you write that to go back in and I'll check these two combinations. I'm not going to worry right now about checking these, but radiator, well, doesn't like something, right? Transmission, error, setting parts. It's giving me an error, so there's still a problem in here. Yep, there's a problem with both those, and I know what it is. All right, so let's just put a 0 here and a 0 here. Calculate. All right, it's not writing them down. Something's screwed up. What does that mean? That means either this isn't getting set, all right? Probably that's what it means, because it's coming out with nothing. So I'm going to have to go back and go in there and check. Oh, I'm not calling it again. There we go. At least I'm consistently doing the wrong thing. All right. So radiator, let's put them both in, calculate. There they are. Again, stuff isn't lining up pretty right now. So if I come in here and I've got this and this and this and I click calculate, I could do some work to pretty that up. I'd rather have you do it. All right. So I'm not going to worry about it. All right. So I've got those done. So now I've got to do this one. And you should already know this. This routine right here is the same as this one right here. So this one is the same as this one, except it's got 3 fields instead of 2, and the field names are different. So again, you could copy or you could type it in. It really and truly doesn't matter that much. I am going to take my call to it and uncomment it. But this is going to be the display miscellaneous charges. So I'm going to put that one down here. right? And it's going to be more of the same. Oops. And that is that whole routine right there. So what's left are parts and labor. And you might think, well, yeah, those are going to be the hard ones. No, believe it or not, those are unbelievably easy. We've already done those. So that's just 2 lines of code. We're just going to add them right there. All right? Giving you a second because there's a couple people still typing here. All right, so what's left? Well, display parts and labor, charges, and then display all of our totals. This is a grand total of 2 lines. Yeah. And I think I'm missing a paren there. And I think I'm missing a paren there. That's the whole routine. One more routine with 3 lines, and then almost mercifully, we're done. So again, I'm going to grab this entire thing here, copy it to the clipboard, paste it, try to paste it back in. No, maybe not. Yep. Yep, I did it twice. All right. So this last one is called what? Display sub-tax final totals. So we have to add here. Now I promise I'll bring it right back up, but I'm going to take it for a spin here. One, these two, here, here, here. Parts cost, let's say, was $100. And labor, let's say they work 10 hours. Calculate. Well, there's everything. So let's check. Oil, 25. Radiator, 50. Transmission, 80. Inspection, 35. Muffler, 150. Tire rotation, 40. Parts, 100. All right. Labor total, something's wrong there. That shouldn't be 10. I can already tell there's a line missing. That's not $10. It should be 10 times 55. I forgot to multiply that by the hourly rate. We'll have to fix that. We'll fix that in a minute. All right. So that should be 550 here, but that's okay. Then we add all these together, 25, 75, 155, 190, 340, 380, 480, 490. So that's working. 490 times 8%, well, 500 times 8% would be $40. So that looks like it's working. 490 plus 39, everything's working. So there's just one thing wrong right now, and we'll have to fix that. All right? And that is back in our, when we're figuring out our charges for labor. All right? So I can clear, that worked. I can exit, yeah, that worked, good. All right. So I've got to go back to where we're figuring out the labor charges. Not display, but where we're actually calculating those. There's the labor charges. Oh, okay, try to do that. So that's labor cost. That isn't right. That's just the amount that we put in there. So what that labor cost right there, all right, to say 0, 0, that's fine. This line is wrong. Yeah, I want to convert that, yes. But then I want to multiply that by labor hourly. So find that line. It's 187 on mine. I don't know where it is on yours. So find that line. It's in the try-catch, in the try part, in the labor routine. So it's in the routine called labor charges. At the end of your try, add to that this, because that'll multiply it by 55. Does that make sense to people? All right. So I'm going to try it one last time. I'm going to put in the same stuff I did before. Notice now it's 550. And I'm just, for right now, I'm going to take for granted that that's correct. Okay? All right. So what do I want you to do? I'm going to write this down right now, literally right before you, right in front of your eyes. All right. So let me get rid of that, and I'm going to make it nice and big so you can see it too. Number 1. Fix any, all errors. There are errors in the program the way it currently stands. There's a couple errors. What do I mean? Well, as I showed you before, I think it's going to do this here, but we're going to find out. I don't think I fixed this error. So I'm going to run the program. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose this and this. No, it did work. So before I got it where I could break it. Okay. What I'm telling you is, there you go. See that? In other words, what happened here, yeah, I get that, is if I do this, okay, I'm going to clear it. But if I do this, okay, and then I click calculate, now if I come back in here and I click calculate again, see how it gives me an error? I don't want that. Well, how do you fix that? I'm letting you figure out how to fix it. All right? So that's the first thing, is I want to make sure, as mentioned, that fix any and all errors. In fact, we're going to call this add internal program documentation. Put comments in this program. What I did in mine, you don't have to do this. You could even say that this is overkill, but what I did in mine, my actual working copy, all right, which I guess I removed that one, but I went back to these comments that I sent you this morning, which are in Joe's Auto. No, it's not. There. I sent you all those comments this morning. I put all those at the beginning of my program. That way, anybody, so if my boss is going to look at what I've done, and my boss doesn't know a lick about programming, she or he can still go in there and look at this stuff and figure out what it is the program is supposed to be doing. All right? Second, when I say internal documentation, you should all realize by now it's internal because it's in the program. It used to be, back in the olden days, like in the 90s, before most of you were born probably, but what happened was you didn't get that much internal documentation, but instead you got external documentation. Sometimes you get a humongous user manual where they print you out a hard copy. All right? Then it went to, you could still get that, or for free or for a nominal charge, we will send you a CD. All right? So I want you to, what does that mean? Any place that you think needs documentation, I want you to put in documentation. So what's the litmus test? I told you already what mine is. If you have to ask whether or not it needs a comment, it needs a comment. All right? That said, and again, this is not funny. So please, when I say this stuff and you're like, yeah, he's trying to be funny. No. Don't comment out a blank line and say, this is a blank line. Right? That is not funny, and that serves no purpose. All right? So add your internal documentation, fix all errors. Add a menu structure. One of the reasons I had you call those things externally from the buttons would be so we could add a menu structure. So again, if you look, do I have it on your picture or not? I don't know. See that? Oil and lube, flushes, etc. So not only do I want this to be a menu structure, but if I choose this, I want it to come down with this possibility and this one and this one. If you choose flushes, I want it to give this possibility and this one. Does that make sense? So underneath oil and lube, it'll say oil change. And then it'll say chassis lube. You don't have to put the prices again. They're already shown here. And here it'll be oil and lube. Under flushes, it'll say radiator. And then it'll say transmission. I don't think I have to write the last two. I think you all get that. All right? But I want this to work whether you are using the buttons or whether you are using the menu options. Does that make sense? All right. I'm not sure how I'm going to grade this, but that'll probably be 10 points for adding the documentation. I'm going to assume there are no errors in it, but that'll probably be 10 points. That'll be 10 points. All right. And number 3, this will be worth 5 points, will be that you follow all class conventions. Now, if you have been keeping up with me, you've already done that. You've already gone in and you've done the tab order. You've done the accept button. You've done the cancel button. We made this maximized. If you don't like the way it looks maximized, you can reset it to normal and you can move stuff around. You can change this around. I don't care about that. But what this is going to all allude to is that's going to be how professional your program looks. Because it's kind of like this. It's sort of like, you know, if you were my kids and there was a job to do, and I did 90% of it, and I said, okay, now I'm turning the keys over to you, and you do the last 10%. All right? Or you just turned 16. We took a long car ride. We're 25 miles from home, and I'm really tired. And I pull off the side of the road, and I go, Josh, you drive the rest of the way. That kind of an idea. That's going to be 5 points. Any questions? All right. Your last assignments, this is the only assignment you're getting for chapter 12. I haven't gone back and reread 13 and 14 yet. If I don't like their exercises, I'll write my own again. All right. But all of these exercises are going to be due next Friday. Not tomorrow, next Friday. What I want is by the time we break, we're going to be done with this book. Now, if you're behind on homework, some of you are, you know who you are. But if you're behind on homework, I'll take it at any time. The longer you wait, the less points you get. All right? Some of you, your stuff has been fine, but if you look at your grades, it's been 22.5 out of 25. I took off 10%, basically, all right, because they were late. That was why I did it. It's funny because I was talking to Charles Corrigan about that yesterday. He says, you are just way too nice a person. So just in case you don't know this, if you decide this program isn't for me and you go over to his, when it's due, he grades them at 4 o'clock that day. If you don't have them in, you get a 0. He doesn't care if you turn it in at 5 o'clock. That's his policy. There's no late, there's no nothing. And the other thing he does is if he gives a test, whether it's a written or a hands-on, if you miss, it's a 0. You cannot make it up. I don't do that. I realize stuff happens. He doesn't particularly like the way that I do that. All right. At least one of you came in this morning at 8:06. That was pretty close to 8:05, so I didn't mark you tardy. He doesn't like that either. He's doing what he can to try to make me an image of him, but it isn't going to work. I'm older than he is, so no, I'm not going to do it. All right. All right. Any questions on this? So again, that'll be 10 points. This is that's a given. All right. This will be 10 points. And this will be not 50 points. 5 points. All right. Due 4:30 p.m. Friday, not Friday, Friday, March 9th, 2018. All right. I'm leaving that up there. It's being taped. If you want, I can print that out. I don't know exactly what that would buy you, but if anybody wants a printout of that, I'll be happy to print it out for you. All right. The rest of the period is yours. Ethan is here. If you've been having some problems with any of the earlier stuff, please go see him. All right. That's why he's here. I screwed up by having him come into, because I changed around the period today. Tomorrow morning, in between those two class things that we've got, I am going to lecture on Chapter 12. But it's going to be a quick lecture. We've hit the most important stuff of the chapter already. All right. Any questions? Yes.
So So the official due date would be 9, 10, 11 tomorrow.
9, 10, 11, yes. Any other questions? The rest of the period then is yours.